Number 10, Domino. Domino is a character that has gotten a whole lot more popular because of her appearance in Deadpool 2. Like before, it was usually just hardcore fans knew who she was, and now, I mean, the whole world probably knows who she is. And while they didn't have a romantic relationship in the film, they kind of did in the comics. And I do stress kind of. You see, Deadpool was interested in her, but not so much her to him. She ended up taking advantage of him, though, to get close to the X-Men. When Deadpool invited her up to his hotel room, she used that as a way to go up, and then she ended up knocking him out. So, it didn't really end well for old Wade, but really, when does it ever? Number 9, Outlaw. Outlaw is actually a mercenary, just like Wade, which is how the two of them met. I mean, what better way to meet someone, right? Sometimes workplace romances actually work out well. Sometimes. Now, we don't know a ton of specific details about the relationship, but the two were always very flirty together. And I mean, they had similar interests, so that tells you right off the bat that they have a connection. And I mean, once you have one thing in common, it can open up a lot of doors. But, of course, we don't know if anything major happened, but Wade was very interested in Outlaw, and it seemed like Outlaw was very interested in Wade. So, yeah. Number 8, Rogue. Yes, that Rogue. Rogue of the X-Men. Although it was brief, it happened, so we are talking about it. It happened when the Avengers Unity team formed. Rogue was leading it, and Deadpool helped fund it. The two of them met, and eventually ended up sharing a kiss. Which, of course, with Rogue's powers, made her, take Deadpool's powers, and she ended up looking like him, and that was basically the extent of their relationship. But, I mean, it's crazy. I never expected Deadpool and Rogue to be even, considered a thing, but I guess in the comic book world, anything can happen. Number 7, Yelena Belova. Yelena is also known as Black Widow during the Dark Reign comic event. The thing is, this is one of those classic scenarios where the guy likes the girl, but the girl doesn't like the guy. At first. Yelena can't really stand Wade at first. But as time goes on, she kind of begins to also kind of like him. Now, this one doesn't go all that far, but it's crazy that Wade was eventually able to almost win her over, to the point where she even started laughing at some of his jokes. Usually people just get really annoyed at Wade with his jokes, but she actually started laughing. And yeah, they even kind of kissed, but it wasn't entirely mutual. But after that, Deadpool just continues to confess his love for her over and over and over again, even if she doesn't express the same type of feelings. Number 6, Satana HELLSTROM. As you can probably tell by her name, Satana is the sister of anti-hero Damian HELLSTROM, whose TV series is apparently all done, but who knows when we'll actually all see it. It's supposed to premiere on Hulu, but some rumors say that it'll just be cancelled because it's not really part of the MCU, and Disney just wants all the Marvel shows to be on Disney Plus and be officially part of the MCU. But back to my main points, Deadpool and Satana dated. But not just out of love. You see, she lost a bet and kind of had to, so you can see how that one didn't really last long. But they didn't end on the worst of terms. They kind of helped each other out. So, I guess that's kind of something, right? Number 5, Anastasia. Like a lot of Wade's other romances, this one didn't end that well. You see, Anastasia was a tattoo artist, and the two of them started dating after Wade was shocked that she wasn't really scared of him once she saw what he looked like without his mask. Which a lot of people would have been. They dated, but it turns out she was only using Wade because she wanted Wade's skills to kill someone in the mob in order to get money. But Wade found out, and then he ends up leaving before she can kind of hurt him. I mean, poor guy, he just can't seem to catch a break in the love department. Number 4, Big Bertha. Now, this relationship didn't last long, but hey, that's usually the way it goes with superheroes, am I right? Big Bertha was actually sent to get Wade off of the couch and back into the world. She asked him out, and Wade accepted, and was actually really happy about it. But when Big Bertha showed up for their date, she shapeshifted to make herself look a lot skinnier, kind of like a supermodel. And Wade got very angry, saying that he wanted it, that he wanted her real body. She turned back and then ended the whole thing because she couldn't be with someone who only cared about her body. So yeah, that was the end of that one. But at least Deadpool wasn't actually shallow. Number 3, Orxa. Alright, so Orxa is an alien who was married to an intergalactic bounty hunter named Macho Gomez, who Wade just happened to kill. Orxa wasn't really happy when she found out that Wade killed her husband, so in order to make things right, Deadpool decided to marry her. Then, one of the people that worked with Orxa tried to kill Wade because he loved Orxa, and then she ends up revealing that she now has feelings for that co-worker, so Deadpool ends up divorcing her. Yeah, it's pretty weird, but honestly, it fits for Deadpool, because you can't really see this happening with any other superhero. It would just be too weird. Number 2, Death. This relationship is pretty crazy because, as you are all probably well aware, Death has someone else in her life. Someone very, very scary. Thanos. So you can see how this whole love triangle probably didn't really make Thanos that happy. But Death and Deadpool were together for a little bit. But of course it didn't last. I mean, Thanos even ended up cursing Deadpool because of it. Cursed him with eternal life, which he did eventually get rid of, but come on, it's kind of crazy, and only Deadpool would be crazy enough to go after the person that Thanos is in love with. You would honestly need to have a death wish to do that, but Deadpool is crazy, so it's not really that surprising, right? No, I can see it. And that would have been a really funny storyline to actually see live action, Deadpool meeting Thanos in the MCU. Man, maybe one day. I mean, he did technically kind of meet Josh Brolin because he played Cable and he even called him Thanos once in Deadpool too, so there's that. Baby steps. Number 1, Vanessa. Vanessa, aka Copycat, will probably be the most famous love interest that Wade has for a long time because of the movies. Yes, she is popular in the comics, but the movies are so big that people will always think of her as Deadpool's top love interest. I mean, she is super cool and interesting. She is very different in the comics though. For example, in the comics she's like a shapeshifter and she's blue, which right away tells you how different she is from her cinematic counterpart. In the film, she is just a human. In the comics, she was eventually killed by Sabretooth, but in the film, she was shot by someone else. Although, after the end credit scene, Deadpool changed time, so it looks like she'll be alive and well again. But I mean, we won't know until we see Deadpool 3 or like X-Force or any type of continuation, if we even get it. But rumors are that we are going to eventually get Deadpool 3, just how it will be is just up in the air because now since Disney bought Fox. So currently we have no idea, but we will wait. It would be so cool to see Deadpool in the MCU though. I feel like that would be the one that would actually work the best because he could still have Deadpool 3 and acknowledge his previous continuity, but also acknowledge MCU continuity because it's Deadpool and he can break the fourth wall and he knows what's going on. So if anything, it would work super well. Let's just see if the MCU will actually capitalize on that fact. One can only hope.
Number 10, Carol Danvers. While this one never became a tried and true relationship, there was a kind of strange but interesting time that these two went on a date. Now, how did this happen? Well, Spider-Man agreed to do a favor for Carol, but in exchange, blurted out that he wanted a date with her. The date itself is super awkward and terrible, but as such proves to make for a pretty hilarious read. You can check it out in Miss Marvel issue 47. Both Carol and Peter struggle to find anything to talk about over a dinner at a nice restaurant. The dinner is then interrupted by evil Hammer agents who are dealt with before the two finish off the night eating junk food together on a rooftop. It actually ends on a nice note, with the two realizing the awkwardness was likely coming from the fact that they were both too concerned with impressing one another. Other than a few cute and infrequent moments of flirting between the two, this relationship has never really been revisited, but it's safe to say that Carol and Peter will always respect and care for one another, even if they aren't currently getting romantic together. Number 9, Betty Brant. Betty Brant was the secretary of J. Jonah Jameson. She and Peter met through their jobs at the Daily Bugle, and after an incident with Betty where Peter, disguised as Spider-Man, saved her life, he realized that he had feelings for her. They dated for some time, but their relationship ended when Betty suspected that Peter might have feelings for one of his fellow classmates. It turned out that this was all a misunderstanding, but regardless, Betty ended up moving on, dating and eventually marrying Peter's friend and coworker, Ned Leeds, who of course also worked at the Bugle. Despite no longer being together, Betty has always considered Peter one of her best and most reliable friends. Number 8, Carly Cooper. After MJ and Peter's marriage was over and done with, Peter slowly ended up moving on. Carly Cooper was one of the first women he ended up with after MJ and he ended things. Carly was a forensic specialist who ended up going on a few dates with Peter, and eventually, after much humming and hawing, the two ended up as a couple for a time. In fact, it was Mary Jane herself who helped the two get together, making Carly see that what was holding Peter back from committing to their relationship really was himself, and helping Peter to see the same. The relationship didn't last, unfortunately, as Peter's life as a vigilante, as Spider-Man, ended up wedging the two of them apart, and they broke up. Carly has been hot and cold with Peter since then, sometimes his friend and confidant, and sometimes wanting nothing to do with him. Number 7, Silver Sable. These two never really got a chance to explore a relationship, but Silver Sable is definitely a love interest that has become popular with fans. Popular enough that she appeared in the PS4 Spider-Man game DLC content Silver Lining, where sparks between the two characters flew. In the comics, Silver Sable is a well-trained mercenary and owner of the company Silver Sable International. Silver Sablenova is from the small fictional Eastern European country of Simkaria, and is known for being an ally of Spider-Man. She is one tough cookie you do not want to mess with. Silver Sable only ever flirted with Spider-Man and then revealed her feelings for him only somewhat when they thought the world was ending. Number 6. Silk. These two instantly had a very magnetic and physical attraction to one another. Spider-Man learned that Cindy Moon was another spider person / spider totem who had been holed up in a bunker for years in order to protect her from the villain Morlun. He freed Cindy from the bunker. I mean, she could have left at any time really, but she didn't because she knew the risk, by giving her the information that Morlun had been defeated. Both immediately had a strong and unexplainable attraction to one another, which could in theory have been caused by the fact that it was revealed that they were both bitten by the same radioactive spider, which granted them their abilities. They had a very physically intimate relationship during their time together due to their off-of-the-charts pheromone attraction to one another, and Silk still remains an ally of Peter's. Number 5. Kitty Pryde. In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, a young Kitty and Peter had a budding romance that many fans enjoyed. The two got together after ending relationships with their current partners, Kitty breaking up with Iceman and Peter breaking up with Mary Jane. Most of their time together was spent taking down criminals, and as such, Kitty was forced to wear a mask costume to prevent anyone from recognizing her and piecing together Spider-Man's secret identity. These two were super cute together, as both of them are kind of awkward yet charming characters. Like with most of Peter's relationships, his need to protect his secret identity ended up being the force to drive them apart, as this also meant that the two had to keep their romantic relationship secret, lest people somehow use that to figure out that Kitty and Peter were the pair of masked vigilantes. Though in the end, it was Peter getting back with Mary Jane that really put an end to their relationship. Although Kitty never really stopped having feelings for Peter, even after he was dead. Number 4. Spider-Gwen. While Spider-Gwen is obviously not a love interest for Peter Parker, whom this list has mostly been about, she is the main love interest for another famous and popular Spider-Man, Miles Morales. And Spider-Gwen and Miles are so cute together, I just had to include them. Their love for one another is so strong that it crosses universes, with Spider-Gwen being from Earth 65, whereas Miles was originally from Earth 1610. These two met and developed feelings for one another, but decided to stay friends. For now anyways. Although the two did witness a potential future where they ended up married with superpowered kids on Earth 8. Number 3. Black Cat. Felicia Hardy is one of the fan favorites when it comes to Spider-Man's most famous love interests. Black Cat almost instantly fell for Spider-Man upon him chasing her down. She is sometimes a criminal, sometimes a hero, and sometimes a neutral party in the Marvel-verse. The two have dated and flirted on and off for years, but it's usually Felicia's obsession with Peter's Spider-Man persona, her jealousy, and her sometimes criminal ways that gets between the two. Though the two have also broken up over other things, like when Spider-Man was kind of worried about Black Cat's safety as a non-powered vigilante. This concern actually inspired Felicia to get powers, which she obtained from the shady villain Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin. Needless to say, she was forced to keep the origins of powers themselves a secret from Peter, while her powers themselves also made her and Spider-Man's relationship more difficult, as it turned out she ended up with bad luck powers, which infected her enemies and those closest to her, which includes Peter Parker. Just her luck. Number 2. Gwen Stacy. Gwen will always be one of the big love interests for Peter because she was one of his first loves, and the one he lost the most dramatically. The loss of Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy have haunted Peter for years, and often still do haunt him today. Peter Parker's story as Spider-Man is nothing without that loss and that feeling of responsibility. It is what has weighed him down while also inspiring him to be a hero, and it has shaped him into the person he is today. Originally, Gwen and Peter both bonded over their love of science, and she fell for him. The death of her father caused a rift in their relationship as Gwen blamed Spider-Man, not knowing that Peter himself was Spider-Man. while also resenting Peter for being so absent around her time of mourning, because, you know, he was Spider-Man, so he was off doing Spider-Man stuff. Peter had promised her father right before he died to protect Gwen, and yet, while trying to save her, she died. The fateful panel where he manages to secure her falling body with his webbing is often pointed to when it comes to why Spider-Man blames himself. Whether or not she was dead before Spider-Man managed to grab her, that fateful snap of her neck will always haunt him and readers. Gwen represents for Peter what could have been. She will always make him wonder, inspire him to be better, and he will always love her. Number 1, Mary Jane. Well, Mary Jane may have initially lost out with Peter to Gwen when Peter and MJ were in that school year love triangle. Mary Jane was the character left standing at the very end, and as such, ended up with Peter. But really, what keeps these two so close is more than that. More than just that convenience. Not only is Mary Jane stunning, but she is kind, empathetic, and really seems to understand Peter in a way no one else does. Sure, she can't always be with him because understanding someone doesn't mean you can always stand them, but the two are usually guaranteed to always get back together. Mary Jane will always be there for Peter and proud to know him, and he'll always admire her boldness and her commitment to do what's right. Both will always love one another, and in a way, be one another's heroes. Number 10, Deadpool. Say what? When did Black Widow and Deadpool ever have a thing? Well, okay, they didn't explicitly have a thing, but there was definitely a decent amount of flirting. And I'm not talking about Nat here, I am talking about Yelena Belova. Yelena has also gone by and goes by the alias Black Widow, and as such, I think it's only fair that we touch on some of her love life as such. I feel like Yelena does not get enough love, both in fandom and in comics, to be honest. In 2008's Deadpool issue 9, Deadpool ends up fighting Yelena, who is there as part of a team to take him into Norman Osborn. During this fight, the two flirt fiercely, though nothing ever really comes of all that flirting. All in all, Yelena actually doesn't ever seem to have much of a love life in the comics. It seems like she is usually too busy being cloned, being evil, being a successful lingerie model and business owner, or actually helping Natasha out. But there definitely were some sparks between her and Deadpool. Number 9, Dr. Doom, or really Count Otto von Doom. This romance comes to us from Neil Gaiman's alternate Marvel universe of 1602, which if you haven't checked it out, you need to, because it's great. Great writing, great art, just great. Here Natasha is a spy working for Sir Nicholas Fury and for the Queen, but she betrays the Queen and Sir Nicholas and her partner Matthew Murdock because she is in love with Count Otto von Doom. Unfortunately, when Natasha later questions Doom's plans to sail his flying ship to the edge of the world, she is repaid for her love and loyalty by being pushed out of the ship in response, causing her to plummet to her death. Yeesh. This is why probably Dr. Doom doesn't date a lot of people. Or does he date a lot of people? I don't think he does, really. Number 8, Tony Stark. Okay, I don't like bringing up this one as, were these two ever really in love? Well, it's debatable. But in the Ultimate Universe, Tony and Natasha end up married, and Tony even makes her a set of Iron Man armor as a wedding gift. However, it turns out that Natasha's actually still a criminal and was just pretending to be a hero and to be interested in Tony in order to complete a mission. She kills Jarvis, confesses her plot, and then fortunately is taken down by Tony and the nanotech he had put in her, which would have helped her control her suit. I don't mind the relationship between the two before this is revealed. In fact, they're even kind of cute together, but this reveal, while perfectly in line with the darker, sort of more violent, alternate world that is the Ultimate Universe, just kind of makes everything her character is supposed to be about, in main continuity I guess, feel kind of pointless. All in all, Black Widow to me just isn't as interesting of a character when she is a villain. And I know that's weird because I always talk about how much I love villains, but with her, I actually prefer her as a neutral party or just a hero. I think that it's just more interesting for her. A spy who betrays you, as her alternate in the Ultimate Verse implies, should be expected. It's kind of boring. Number 7, Rogue. While these two really only shared one kiss in the comics, I like to think that there could be something more there. At least from Rogue's side of things. She really did seem to enjoy that kiss. Although for Black Widow, she was just passing on information. But passing on information with a real good kiss though. Like, she probably could have just touched Rogue. but she kissed her. Which makes me wonder if there might be more of an attraction between Rogue and Natasha than they'd like to admit. When we're talking about Black Widow's love interests, actually, it's kind of interesting. A lot of people think of her as being a spy and having, a lot of romantic partners, but Nat doesn't really open up too many, and as such, despite being around in the comics since the 60s, has really only had a few serious romantic relationships. And usually with Black Widow, it's serious, or it's work, or it's really not much of anything. Number 6, HERCULES. So this romance was actually smaller and less significant than most have implied it was. But although it was random, this relationship definitely happened. It was never as fully fleshed out or expertly built up or written as some of Natasha's other relationships. Instead, it was simply acknowledged and referred to in a few issues that make up the Avengers story known as the Korvac Saga from 1978. It's never explained how or why these two get together, and after a few issues of bickering, they kind of just break up, but it is randomly again referred to in 2010's HERCULES Fall of an Avenger. So for better or worse, these two definitely hooked up at least, and then rather than continue or explain this love affair, writers simply just had them merrily go on their way to other love interests. But they still like to come back to it every now and then for some reason. Number 5, Alexei Shostakov, also known formerly as the Red Garden, or Ronin more recently. Alexei was actually Black Widow's husband before she was Black Widow, back when we knew her by the name Natalia Romanova. Before Nat was a Russian spy and assassin, she was a famous ballerina and was married to Alexei, one of the Soviet Union military's top pilots. Without Alexei, Nat would never have even become Black Widow. He was moved to Special Ops, but as such was told that he would no longer be able to contact his friends or family. The Soviet Union told Natalia that Alexei had died during the testing of a rocket, which prompted her to ask what it was that she could do for her country in Alexei's memory. The KGB happily took her under their wing and began training her as a spy and assassin at the Red Room. This story would of course later be retconned, of course. Instead, we are offered in the 2005 Black Widow series an origin story where Natalia is trained from a very young age in the Black Widow Ops program, but has artificial memories of training as a ballerina implanted into her mind. And so if we're going with that version of a story, Alexei wasn't really the man who prompted her to become a spy, as she would have sort of already been trained as one without really knowing it. Still, I kind of like the original story better. Is that weird? Number 4, Hulk. This one surprised many. This relationship comes to us from the MCU, and while it seems to have fizzled out, Bruce Banner's reaction to Black Widow's death in Endgame revealed that he still likely had strong romantic feelings for her. These two apparently were drawn to one another because of their pasts. They both considered themselves monstrous, and it was this connection that brought them closer together. Bruce dealing with his anger issues and Hulk, and Black Widow dealing with her past as a trained Russian spy and assassin, all the red in her ledger that we've heard so much about. Hulk spent time off-world in Sakaar, and when he returned to Earth, it seemed like Bruce and Natasha were happy to see one another, but there weren't that many passionate sparks between them. A lot had changed, and it seemed that the time they had spent apart caused their relationship to fade, though I think they both still cared about each other very much, but just neither one really knew how to bring it up again. Also, Bruce kind of became like a Hulk-Bruce hybrid when he became the MCU version of Professor Hulk. Number 3, Daredevil. While fans of the MCU and Marvel Netflix series may be surprised to hear this one, comic book fans will likely consider Matt Murdock one of Natasha's ultimate love interests. The bottom line is these two just felt really right together, despite being from kind of two different hero worlds. Black Widow is a former assassin turned good guy who fights on a usually very global scale, whereas Daredevil is a lawyer by day who takes his fight for justice to the streets at night, and pretty much sticks to being the hero of one borough of New York, Hell's Kitchen. Natasha and Matt even both lived in San Francisco for a while together. Yeah, Natasha got Matt to move to San Francisco. Pretty crazy. Number 2, Hawkeye. In the comics, these two have had a very passionate romance together and were even almost married. Both were still criminals when they met and fell in love. When Hawkeye defected and became a hero, Black Widow defected to stay with him. So, what happened between them? Why didn't they get married? Well, Black Widow had a mission to complete, unsurprisingly. In many ways, missions are kind of Black Widow's #1 love interest. Natasha is often depicted as being married to her work. She's very involved in making sure she completes missions. Now, the mission she was on this time caused her to have to break Hawkeye's heart, and after that mission was complete, the two never really reconciled and got back together. However, this didn't completely ruin their relationship. They're still very good friends. Number 1, Winter Soldier. I mean, who else could possibly be Natasha's number one, other than her work? These two have known each other since Red Room days and are really great for one another just because they have so much in common. Bucky also seems to respect and trust Natasha like no one else. While Daredevil was often worried for her safety in their relationship and struggled with accepting that Black Widow could, take care of herself, Bucky has confidence in her. He trusts that she'll ask for help when she needs it. They feel comfortable relying on one another, but also trust one another enough to give each other space and independence, which I think makes for the best kind of relationship in any circumstance that anyone could ask for. Trust and respect is pretty much the winning combo.
Number 10, Barbara Gordon. So this one has a weird and complicated history with fans. You see, it all started during Batman Beyond, which is an amazing animated series. If you haven't seen it, watch that right now. It was hinted that Bruce and Barbara, aka Batgirl, had a romantic past. Fans really didn't know how to think about that, but they just kind of let it slide, because what else? But didn't stop there. In the animated film adaptation of the comic book The Killing Joke, the two took their relationship to the next level. Now, a lot of fans just attribute this relationship to Bruce Timm, who was the creator of the whole, DCAU, DC Animated Universe, and he was a producer on the Killing Joke animated film. For some reason, he just really wanted to see those characters together. Regardless, I just don't think that this is a relationship that fans will ever really get on board with. But it had to be on the list. Number 9, Chase Meridian. Chase is a psychologist and was introduced in the film Batman Forever. She was played by Nicole Kidman when Val Kilmer was Batman. Now, regardless of what you think of this film, one of the things that everyone agrees on is that they really enjoyed Chase. She had a really interesting and complex relationship with both Bruce and Batman. She eventually figured out, that the two were the same person. She only appeared in one film, but in 2013 she did make her debut in the comics. It would have been interesting to see where they would have taken her as a character and her relationship with Bruce, but unfortunately that never ended up happening. Batman and Robin ended up happening, and we all know how that turned out. Number 8, Talia al Ghul. This is probably one of the more complex relationships of Batman's career, if you could even call it a relationship at all. So Batman has never trusted the League of Assassins. That's not, new information. But he has tried to work with Talia from time to time. But the thing is, Talia wanted a kid. In her eyes, a kid with Batman would be the perfect combination. They ended up having a kid together, Damian Wayne. Although it's kind of implied that she drugged Batman and that's how Damian happened. I think all fans agree that this is definitely not one of Bruce's healthiest relationships. Number 7, Wonder Woman. Sometimes office romances happen, even with superheroes. That is what happened here. You see, Batman and Wonder Woman are both founding members of the Justice League, and the two of them spend a lot of time together, so it should come as no surprise that they ended up dating just for a little bit. I mean, they even kissed during the Justice League animated cartoon. And there's definitely some flirtation between Bruce and Diana in the DCEU. I mean, we saw it briefly in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and we didn't really see it in the theatrical release Justice League film. I mean, there were hints of it, but we'll probably see a lot more of it in, the Snyder Cut, or Zack Snyder's Justice League as it's now called. But only time will tell with that one. Number 6, Silver St. Cloud. Silver actually has a really interesting history with Bruce. They both have money, and that's how the two of them met. They started dating, and eventually, she found out Bruce was Batman, which seems to be a trend here. And that is actually why it ended. Silver didn't want to see something that happen to Bruce. If she was with him, she would always have to worry that, he would never come home at night. And that is something she just didn't want to do. Which automatically makes this different than a lot of other people on the list. I wonder if Silver will end up making her way into Matt Reeves' new Batman trilogy. I mean, he has a lot of other characters coming in, but this one would be, kind of something interesting and new. Number 5, Poison Ivy. So lots of people can't resist Poison Ivy. Partly because she can make men fall in love with her with a spell. And that is exactly what happened with Batman. I mean, can you really see Batman just dating her? They have a completely different view on everything. So it wouldn't really work. I mean, and it's not only Batman she has made fall in love with her. It's also Superman as well. So she can literally make anyone fall in love with her. Unless you have those fake lips on like Batman and Robin, then you're good. Just everyone get some of those fake lips. Because Batman and Robin teaches us a lot. Number 4, Sasha Bordeaux. Sasha was actually Bruce Wayne's former bodyguard. Yeah, even Bruce Wayne needs a bodyguard, guys. She was actually sentenced to Blackgate after her and Bruce were accused of killing Vesper Fairchild, which they actually didn't. But she ended up finding out who Bruce Wayne was, and the two of them actually trained together on multiple occasions. She wanted to become a vigilante, and she ended up going out with Batman to fight crime. Their relationship didn't really last long, but even when she did go to prison, she never ended up giving Bruce his identity, which instantly shows you just how much she cares for him. Number 3, Vicki Vale. Vicki Vale is one of Batman's oldest relationships. She's also one of the more famous ones because she was the one to make her debut in Tim Burton's 1989 film, Batman, starring Michael Keaton, which was a massive success. Vicki is a reporter that works for the Gotham Gazette. Like many others on this list, they weren't together long, but Vicki holds a special place in a lot of Batman's fans' hearts for being the first one to debut on the big screen. She didn't appear in other movies, but it was a big deal when she first showed up in the film. Number 2, Rachel Dawes. Like Chase Meridian, Rachel was first created for the films. Rachel made her debut in Batman Begins, where she was actually played by Katie Holmes, but then she was recasted in The Dark Knight with Maggie Gyllenhaal, which, is the version that people remember more. Rachel has become one of The Dark Knight's most famous love interests because both films she appeared in are considered to be Batman's best films. She was a childhood friend of Bruce who found out, eventually he was Batman. But they couldn't be together until the world didn't need Batman anymore. She then went on and started dating Harvey Dent during The Dark Knight, and ultimately chose to be with him before, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, she got killed by the Joker. It was a tragic end to their love story because Bruce was ready to give up everything for her. But Rachel will always remain one of his most famous loves, even though, it was kind of brief and ended really badly. Number 1, Catwoman. Was there ever any doubt? Come on, guys. I think everyone predicted this. I think everyone knew that Selena Kyle was going to be number 1 on this list. Her romance with Batman is famous. The two of them have had an on and off again relationship for such a long time and shared a bond that you just don't see with anyone else. They were going to get married, guys. They were going to get married, but Selena left Bruce at the altar saying that he couldn't be Batman and be happy, so she had to leave, which left fans devastated. Come on! Can Bruce ever catch a break? Probably not. Although, some are still holding out hope that they will be together again, and maybe Bruce will finally be happy. Who knows? But it seems like the writers don't want to take him in that general direction because they just want to keep pushing a mopey Batman, which is still a cool version of Batman, but come on. He could be happy. Bruce can be happy, guys.